morning. After a break, which was also fruitful because we managed to do oversight visit, we are back at work, starting where we left off. Today, we'll be dealing with our report of the strat plan that we did as the portfolio committee. I know that we thought that today will be on our study tour in one of the countries in Africa. Unfortunately, it was not going to be so. Sincere apologies to all. I know that you were ready, you have done everything, done all the vaccines that are expected to be done when you go to another country, but it was not to be so. We will still pursue the issue of study tour further, and we'll communicate the new dates. We are having a new member in our portfolio committee because Honorable Samantha Graham Mare has left the committee. Her political party, the DA, removed her to join another portfolio committee. So today we have a new member. Please bear with me if I don't pronounce you correctly. Say Solo. Am I pronouncing you correctly, Honorable Member?
Chairperson, good morning, and good morning to all the honorable members of the Portfolio Committee. It's Sello Sitlolo in Setswana.
It's the name. Sitlolo.
Sitlolo.
Okay. Thank you, Honorable Member. So we have been joined by Honorable Member Sello Sitlolo, who is going to be with us, hoping till the end of the term, because we are left with less than a year to go to the end of this term. You are most welcome, Honorable Sitlolo. In this committee, one of the things that we do is that we respect each other. We not shout at each other. We may differ with opinions and the views in a certain matter, but one thing that we always do is we do that professionally, and we respect each other. We're hoping that you will join us and take off where Honorable Graham Mare, who was a very valuable member of this portfolio committee, left off, together with her partner, Honorable Hicklin. I know that she's going to miss her so much, but you are most welcome in our portfolio committee. Honorable members, we are also having Lwazi Ben, Mr. Lwazi Ben, who is going to be our acting secretary. Ms. Nola Martinez is being utilized in the ad hoc committee. So we have been given an ad hoc committee for floods. We have been given Mr. Lwazi Ben, who will be acting for us while Ms. Martinez is busy on that side. You are also welcome, Mr. Lwazi Ben. Do we have any apologies?
Good morning, Honorable Chairperson and the members. Chairperson, as you have stated, my name is Lwazi Ben. I'll be acting for Ms. Martinez. The only apology that I have recorded, Chairperson, is for Honorable Tring. That's the only apology that I have, Chairperson. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ben. But I have been made of an apology of Honorable Mashele, who won't be joining us this week and next week due to family commitments that have taken her to be busy at his home. But when we are having an urgent matter, he will be able to join, but we have excused him today. On that note, can we then be given the report of our strat plan?
Good morning, Chairperson. Good morning, members. Just checking with you whether the screen is available. I mean, whether it's visible to you. Can anyone give me an indication?
Parliament of the Republic of South Africa, is that what is also appearing on the site?
Correct. That is the official cover of our strategic plan, Chair. So let me commence. Good morning, everyone, staff as well as our members. The strategic plan that we will deal with today, or report on rather, is consisting of, it's the first draft. Well, the first draft was done in 2019, and it was redrafted as it is now, based on strategic meetings that we had in 2020 and the strategic workshop that took place from 9 to 10 September. The strategic meetings I referred to, Chair, is the meetings in which we dealt with the Infrastructure Development Act and how that impact on our strategy and method of work. And the strategic workshop then brought out, was then arranged also for us to continue with that process, as a strategic plan is always a living document. But as I go through it, members will certainly be able to recognize some of the input that they made, but also how the strategic plan in terms of method and in terms of strategy, how it guides what we do on a weekly basis while Parliament is sitting and while committees are working, and how it also guides the oversight we do on visits such as the Small Harbour or the towers, and other visits to Causey Bay, etc., and the other harbours, the other ports. Chair, the contents of this presentation will then, if we can go through how this committee's mandate links to Parliament's legislative mandate, Parliament's mission and its values. And for this committee, 1.3 is important because it's a vision that's lived it's lived out through action. It's not just a vision, and the mission is therefore not just a statement, it's something that's put into action by this committee. And there are values in this parliamentary strategic vision and mission that contain values that drive daily conduct and performance of committee members in their oversight work and legislative work. The strategic priorities of the fifth Parliament also influenced. Remember, when we came in, we did some of the legacy report. We went through that and we stated to members, this is how we would move to outcome-oriented goals. And then we deal with the committee and the broad policy environment within which we operate. How committee work is geared to give effect to the legislative and oversight mandate of Parliament. We deal with support services, basically listing who we are and what we do. And then we go to the mandate, vision, and oversight focus areas of this committee, and key 4.4 key oversight areas for the 5-year term, and then the activities. Now, the report is always, the strategic plan always consists of two components, members. It will have the strategic work that I just listed now, but then the second portion is actually not the strategic plan. The second portion is always the annual performance plan. Now, in this meeting, we're not going to deal with the APP, but what I would want to show is what I couldn't show you on the 9th and 10th of September. You may recall that we had problems with projecting that. What I would like to show is what an APP looks like, what the components are, because members are not always aware that we actually do an annual performance plan, and we do report to our managers about it, because it does get audited, internal as well as external auditors. So the basic thing, Chair, is what members already know, that if we summarize, then we are an extension of the National Assembly. This committee is an extension of National Assembly. It follows the rules of the National Assembly in its meetings. It is chaired in that way. Points of order, all the procedural aspects that pertain to and guides the National Assembly also guides committee work, whether we sit in Parliament, whether we sit hybrid, whether we sit in Saldanha Bay or Causey Bay or at Beitbridge, even on a roadside when we meet, it's a meeting of Parliament similar to that of the National Assembly of Parliament, and those rules apply. The strategic plan, as I state here, is aligned to the vision and mission and the values and strategic overview as described in that of the strategic plan and the APP of Parliament. But in addition, we must state that the committee functions as Parliament's oversight mechanism over the Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure, who is the executive authority of the department. And it also deals with the Director General, who is the accounting officer of the department, as well as the accounting authorities of the entities, every entity that report to the Minister. So we do oversight over them. What we need to say in the case of this particular 5-year term is that this is the first time that we have a Department of Public Works and Infrastructure. And therefore, as I stated earlier on, the strategic planning events that we are reporting here in this strategic plan includes a workshop that we held on 2nd September 2020 that focused on the Infrastructure Development Act, because the inclusion of infrastructure into the department means that this committee now needs to know the Infrastructure Development Act as part of the legislative mandate of that department, and it affects how we do oversight. And then, of course, I refer again to the 9th and 10th, 22 September, how we then dealt with some of those. This, Chair, is the legislative mandate stated. The Constitution, the Powers, Privileges and Immunities of Parliament and Provincial Legislators Act of 2004, the Financial Management of Parliament Act number 10 of 2009, as it was amended in 2014, Remuneration of Public Office Bearers Act. All of these are also part of guiding our work as a committee. Then the broad plans and structures of government, which affects the department and guides the department, where it plays a coordinating role. Remember, we get departments that are service delivery department, we get departments that are coordinating departments, and the Public Works Department is one of those coordinating departments. It's guided by the National Development Plan, a vision for 2030. It's guided by the National Infrastructure Plan, and this is because if you see footnote 5, I will go there just now. The NIP is the plan that gave us the infrastructure portion component of our oversight, and the National Infrastructure Maintenance Strategy, as well as these broad plans, legislation, regulation, white papers, and other structures that relates to specific oversight work of this committee. And that is the IDT Trust, which is a document, the Deed of Trust, number 669 of 91. This is the IDT that operates under Schedule 2, and we'll speak quite a bit about the IDT in the strategic plan. The PFMA that I held up as an act with a constitution to members in the very first meeting when we met, and I said that is an act that will guide quite a lot of our work. The Preferential Public Procurement Act of 2000, the CIDB Act, Construction Industry Development Board Act, it should be, and my apologies, I will fix that. The Council for the Built Environment Act, the Broad-Based Black Economic Empowerment Act, GIAMA, Money Bills Amendment Procedure and Related Matters Act, that is the act, Chairperson and members, that give life to the Parliamentary Budget Office, but also to how we amend, how we have the powers to amend the budget allocation to this department and entities. Now, if we think of the context within which we are talking right now, the historical conjuncture we are at, the issue of a mandatory oversight is a key issue that is being discussed for the next 5 years of Parliament. And you may recall that I refer to the question of whether committees have the tools to actually amend a subsection or sub-branch of an allocated funds to a sub-branch or sub-program that is underperforming, consistently so. And in our case, we of course do have a few of those. The other thing that the Money Bills Amendment Procedure and Related Matters Act give is it says to us that we must have a budgetary review and recommendation report. And members are aware that we are moving closer and closer to that September, October of each year. And then the IDA that I referred to, and Agrima, that was the last law that we made as a committee, not in this term, but in the previous term. Then the white papers, chairperson and members, that would and should have given us a public works bill is the public works, the white paper Public Works Towards the 21st Century that was drafted in 1997, I think in the time of the former minister, Jeff Hadebe. In his period, he was one of the first, I think he was the first public works minister, as well as creating an enabling environment for reconstruction, growth and development in the construction industry. Now, that second one deals specifically with CIDB and CBE and the other entities, while the Public Works Towards 21st Century gives us, or should have given us, the Public Works Bill. We all know how far behind the department has always been with that. And then the structures that operate within the department is the PMTE and Infrastructure South Africa. There are problems with and challenges with both of them. And I think when we come to matters that emerged in the session, strategic session 2022 on the 9th and 10th of September, some of that will relate to those two entities. The vision of Parliament is stated here as the freely elected representatives of the people of South Africa. Our mission is to represent and act as a voice of the people in fulfilling our constitutional functions of passing laws and overseeing executive action. That mission is a very important one. It is closely related to the interpretation of this chapter 4 institution of the Constitution, that must pass laws and oversee executive action, and it instructs you as members what you do, as well as us as support staff, or how we support you. Then what I mentioned was a vision that is lived out through action. The vision states that the institution would be an activist and responsive people's parliament that improves the quality of life of South Africans and ensures enduring equality in our society. A lot, very important vision that says that members are activists and that they are responsive to the needs of the people, and everything we do is about ensuring enduring, ongoing equality in our society. But we must also note that that vision re-emphasizes the aims to create an open, democratic, and equal society as described in the National Development Plan and Vision 2030. It's a parliament that adds an activist ethos. The work that members in this committee perform is part of the activism in the individual constituencies. These actions drive the oversight work as a foundation to increasingly achieve equality, decrease poverty, and increase employment. So the issue of equality, fighting poverty, and ensuring employment so that we can have social and economic growth in our country is crucial. The values that drive members and staff are that of openness, responsiveness, accountability, teamwork, professionalism, and integrity. And integrity is a tough one because it means you breathe and live that. The strategic priorities of the 6th Parliament, it was already identified in the 5th Parliament, and therefore it's restated here as strengthening oversight and accountability, enhancing public involvement, deepening engagement in international fora, strengthening cooperative government, and strengthening legislative capacity. The strategic outcome-oriented goals, 14.1 of the Financial Management of Parliament Act 10 of 2009 requires the Secretary of Parliament, Secretary to Parliament, who is the accounting officer, to prepare a draft strategic plan and present this to the Speaker, who is the Executive Authority, and the National Council of Provinces chairperson within 6 months after the election of the National Assembly, or by another date that is decided by Parliament. Following the May 2019 elections, the STP directed a process whereby members of both houses then participated in developing policy priorities. That says for the 5th, it should be for the 6th Parliament. Those will all be fixed. And then the strategic outcomes as put forward by the National Assembly and the NCOP can be listed here from that process. But we're saying that that guides the work of this committee as well, and they include the following: enhance Parliament's oversight and accountability over the work of the executive to ensure implementation of the objective of the National Development Plan and the MTSF 2019 to 2024, to cooperate and collaborate with other spheres of government on matters of common interest and ensure cooperative and sound intergovernmental relations, as described in the Constitution. 3, to enhance public involvement in the processes of Parliament to realize participatory democracy through the implementation of the public involvement model by 2024. Now, members may feel encouraged by the fact that this committee's recent oversight trip showed the value of public participation in our processes, both from Saldanha right through, as walked through at Gordons Bay when a gentleman approached Honorable Njobo, sorry, my apologies, Honorable Njobe, and requested assistance with his business. This is the type of activist parliament that this vision and mission puts forward. Fourthly, enhanced parliamentary international engagement and cooperation, enhanced ability, number 5, of Parliament to exercise its legislative power through consolidation and implementation of integrated legislative processes by 2024 in order to fulfill its constitutional responsibility and to build a capable and productive parliamentary service. And this is referring to ourselves as support staff that delivers enhanced support to members of Parliament in order that they may efficiently fulfill their constitutional functions. Now, our strategic plan had the following objectives. I'm just trying to admit Honorable Shabalala. The objectives was developed by members in the strategic planning session, and members asked these questions. How do we ensure that the executive authority is accountable for their mandated function? How do we do oversight over the executive authority? Oversight over how the executive authority drives policy towards the triple challenge. The triple challenge being the reduction of poverty, the creation of employment, and the battle to ensure enduring equality. How does the committee set its own agenda, fed by matters arising from their constituencies? Of course, matters that relates to the public works and infrastructure sector. Members put questions to the executive authority, both oral for oral reply and both for written reply, to deal with matters related to portfolio committee and public works and infrastructure. The key thing is to think, how do you use your questions strategically to feed into the
me, Chair, or have we lost Shay?
I think there's a problem, Chairperson. Can I be guided?
Yes, we lost you a little bit, but you may continue.
My apologies for that. I don't know where you lost me. Should I go back to the second or the first bullet?
No, I think it was only less even than a minute.
Okay, I'll sort it out. Questions, what I was saying about questions is asking questions should not just be asking them for the sake of asking them. It should be linked to a strategy that feeds into oversight of the committee, as well as ensuring that constituencies, public challenges raised in constituencies are addressed, because as activist informed parliamentarians, we do things to make a difference so that we fight poverty, unemployment, and inequality. Where we then also find disjuncture between the programs of the department, the PMTE, and the entities, how these are brought into our work, that's specifically in members' provinces and in their constituencies. Monitoring challenges noted in the legacy reports of the previous committee, and members may notice that we do quite a lot of work that remain incomplete. Monitoring how the department gives effect to the recommendations that we make in the oversight reports. Even there's a strategy that we follow as support staff with the chairperson and the management committee, that what we do is we check up on, as well as revisit matters that we put down as recommendations. In fact, we even restate recommendations if they are not, if they have not been performed to our satisfaction. Then also monitoring on whether and how the recommendations of oversight activities of the committee are implemented to ensure a baseline for the following oversight tasks of the committee to drive progressively towards realizing strategic objectives. What we mean by this is, as the department reports on a matter, we note regression or progress of a matter, and we will restate that in reports, but we will also honestly refer to it in our reports and ensure that we have a baseline as to where the department is or not is, and therefore we can see whether they over or underachieve on certain things. How the committee does oversight over the broader sector of public works and infrastructure as a concurrent function at local, provincial, and national government, as stated in Schedule 4A and 5A. Those are the two schedules that refer to public works as a concurrent function. And then collaborative oversight over the mandated deliverables of the public works and infrastructure sector with sister committees such as transport, such as human settlements, water, and environment. And recent visits showed how much of our work relates to the work of forestry, fisheries, and the environment, but also the South African Police Service and other security structures, because some of our infrastructure is under threat and is not well looked after if there's no security. Then parliamentary planning to ensure that this committee's representation in the infrastructure related work, and that's what I meant by forestry, fisheries, and environment, transport, human settlements, social development, home affairs, all of those, we need to figure out how this committee not only uses, but how we draw on what happens in the other committees. There's a lot of stuff happening in SCOPA that relates to this committee, for instance. A lot of these SIU investigations get reported there, and we need to follow that, which is why many times our committee members attend that procedures in such committees. It's also part of why our support staff has now been split with our secretary doing work on the flood infrastructure damages and how that is done by provinces and local government. And then how to include issues from the constituencies of members in the program of the committee. And then the involvement of the Public Works and Infrastructure Department in the strategic planning of the portfolio committee itself. I'm not a big fan of involving the department and the executive in our strategic plan, but members wanted this in here. I think the committee should guide how it does its oversight and should not be guided by the executive authority, because the vision from inside the department, the perspective from inside the department will always be positive towards themselves rather than critical. I think, and I'm stating this as your support staff that provides strategic advice, I think there must be a healthy and respectful distance in strategic planning between the committee and the department. I say this because historically, before the content advisor position was created, there was a tendency for the department to come in to strategic planning and very often guiding the committee of how it must do oversight over the department. That is just not a healthy situation. Member capacitation to empower skills and knowledge of the public works and infrastructure and property sector. This is very much in the ambit of human settlements, but it is important that members are capacitated so they have the skills and knowledge of the sector and the property sector, but also in terms of legislating, making laws, oversight. Members need to know the oversight and accountability model of Parliament. The issue of a mandatory oversight, monitoring and evaluation. There's a department in the presidency that does that, and we need to know what they do. Governance broadly, the functioning of boards. We need to know how boards function in private sector, but also in the public sector, and what the difference is. All these require an evaluation of the induction and training of members. And Parliament normally takes charge of that, with support staff basically not being part of this. And so we don't really know precisely how members are trained and capacitated to do its oversight and its work in the committees. I'm also a big proponent of members educating themselves, and so that last bullet refers to quite a lot of that. The challenges that members raised in the strategic planning session related to oversight over the executive authority and entities. These are challenges that consistently emerged from 2019 onwards, but they also relate to legacy report issues. Members raised these issues. Yeah, I'm just, the note between brackets is important. It might be repeated later on over the rest of the term towards. The use of consultants always came out. Use of consultants by the department, but also by the PMTE and inside the entities. While there are very often personnel appointed to perform. I'm so grateful. That's so beautiful. Okay, I'm going to continue with this. This is important, Chairperson and members. The use of consultants, while the organogram actually showed that there are personnel appointed and paid for per month to do that work. I'm here referring to specifically the program 4. If members recall correctly, the expropriation bill responses of the department to communities' input, and where communities were saying particular sections required further input. It was not done by the department, but it was done by a privately sourced legal firm. begs the question as to why there are staff appointed while they then have to outsource these functions. And it happens also with construction, project management, and we saw it in the harbors also. And this also relates to the IDT that is supposed to be the social infrastructure development agency, yet we have this department using KUGA, DBSA, and other entities that falls outside our sector. Prestige portfolio management by the PMTE at regional offices in Cape Town, which deals with the parliamentary precinct, the parliamentary villages, the presidency and ministers' residences in Cape Town. But then in Pretoria, the presidency departmental head offices, Brinterian Estate, the presidency and the ministers' residences, and then Johannesburg, Durban, Port Elizabeth, Mthatha, East London, Port Elizabeth, Kimberley, and Uppington. Those are all the regional offices. The fact that I always state to members is that if you think PMTE, your head goes to, there's one particular office in the head office, and there's a thing that exists with all these people doing the work. Reality is that it's spread across the country in regional offices. Third bullet, all SAPS police stations and facilities, courts, correctional services facilities, all of them require collaborative oversight attention with sister committees. So a large portion of program 4 in this department, the money that's spent on and transferred to other entities deals with the maintenance work in police stations, courts, correctional services facilities, etc. The sister committees we refer to are then, of course, correctional services and SAPS, including home affairs and human settlements, etc. We need increasing oversight of dual maintenance responsibilities of South African revenue services, SAPS, home affairs facilities at border crossings, ports. What I refer to here is, when I say specialized oversight work, is in future, we may need this committee to think of members specializing in specific aspects of infrastructure maintenance, because the area is so wide. And so the sector is broad, and therefore there might be a need for specific members to think of specializing in specific things, as this would then feed the broader committee much better. Oversight work over more than just the minister as the executive authority, but this infrastructure addition, this component, means that we need to do oversight over other ministerial responsibilities as well. And there's nothing wrong with that. Committees are enabled, empowered to call any minister to do oversight. There's no such thing as one committee belonging to a minister, or a minister belonging to a committee, or vice versa. A lot of the infrastructure work goes right across to every single department. In the cabinet, they have interministerial committees that report to cabinet on these, and we need to start thinking of which interministerial committees we pull into our oversight work, including the Presidential Infrastructure Coordinating Commission and Infrastructure South Africa. Those projects fall over a whole range of ministerial responsibilities, as well as departments and entities, some of which were gazetted in the Strategic Infrastructure Project, SIPs, under the Infrastructure Development Act of 2014. There was reference also to a leadership deficit that has to do with both long suspensions. We might recall that it came to the former DG's contract came to an end after he resigned, but that was preceded by long suspensions. It resulted in court actions, costly payouts by the department, And this adds to the effect of a lack of institutional memory, we say. And this is not just this department, it's other departments also in government, where we have very long periods of people acting when somebody is suspended. The suspended person or persons would then have a lot of knowledge of the department. Once they leave, that knowledge is gone. The acting people are merely that. They are acting. They're not really in that position. Even though they are responsible for the tasks in the period that they are acting, this is not consistent. This is not stable. This leadership deficit matter needs to come to an end. Government needs to be much more robust, and it needs serious attention much further up. But this committee needs to state these things. Oversight over infrastructure coordinating function of the district development model. This means what I referred to earlier on the intergovernmental aspect of our work, as guided by Chapter 3 of the Constitution, that speaks to cooperative government, and the district development model as a strategy of government to ensure that implementation of its programs is much more coordinated. The DPSA, Infrastructure South Africa, and Treasury having a memorandum of understanding of how those things are done. That DDM would also mean a single plan when it comes to the planning aspect of infrastructure project, but also how province, local and national give effect to such. Planning permissions function, that's what I'm referring to there, as well as how this committee do oversight over these things. I say from 2020 to 2025, it can also be 19 to 24 because a financial year stretches over 2 years, but we will make certain that that is more consistently stated as 19 to 24. Infrastructure South Africa as an entity raised the following issues: lack of regulatory clarity, PFMA Regulation 16, that is the regulation that refers to the PPP. It requires amendment to fit the strategic infrastructure development system, strategy method that the former minister rolled out with much fanfare, and the current minister not necessarily speaking too much about that, but it's still in this period, and so we say that that needs there needs to be clarity, there needs to be more regulation that is stated specifically for SIDS as well as for the SIPS projects. And we're talking here about fluidity with the situation of the PPP unit of Treasury and the Office of the President. Where is it situated? Is it in Treasury or is it in the Presidency? There is far much fluidity in this aspect, and the vagueness create vacuums and gaps within which maladministration and corruption can take place and oversight can't take place properly. Lack of structural organogram clarity of the Infrastructure South Africa, where the CEO of the Infrastructure Investment Office in the Presidency also headed the Infrastructure South Africa. That position seems to not be filled at the moment, as that individual is now the Minister of Electricity. And we have heard absolutely nothing about who the new head of Infrastructure South Africa is. It is a similar issue that I raised in the previous bullet around leadership, where leadership is not consistent. One person moves on, another person acts, and it remains like that. The institutional memory is gone, as well as there's a lack of clarity. There's a lack of structural organogram clarity, as I just said, but the lack of set timeframes for Department of of Public Service and Administration and Treasury assessments. Remember, the Department of Public Service and Administration is the department that has a unit within it that assists when new units are set up, new units such as Infrastructure South Africa is set up, or when a department is going through a structural reorganization. DPSA and Treasury does assessments of these to complete the organograms. And this is about function, form, and remuneration, fit for purpose and efficiency, rather than merely effectiveness of these entities. Now, the PMTE list is listed here with the ESA because that entity is not fully operational, even though it was quote unquote operationalized in 2015, because the PMTE has taken on all the risks of the DPWI, yet it is not able to trade on the value of the immovable asset portfolio and generate its own income. PMTE failure to state immovable assets in full compliance of GIAMA. It sets a very low target for itself per year in the APP to get custodian immovable asset management plans and user immovable asset management plans drafted per immovable asset with user departments. That relates to the deterioration of state buildings and properties, as well as the lack of security in the end when a building stands vacant for a long time and it drops the property prices, because we have so much poverty in this country and in the world, because in other parts of the world there are similar issues like this, where the vulnerable, the poor, those people who live on the streets, then seek shelter in these buildings. The unfortunate thing is that many of us then start calling them names such as vagrants, while in actual fact they are not necessarily the perpetrators. The initial perpetrator is the department that moves out, and this department of ours that we do oversight over, that should in fact ensure security for those buildings and ensure that the buildings remain well maintained. We must be very careful as a country to bundle all poor and working class people together as the bad ones. Leases and maintenance, suspension of rental contracts causing tension, including unnecessary costly legal action. And here we also refer to the high debt that this department needs to pay to municipalities, and that it often does not service. They would let the debt accumulate and pay those rates very late. This unsettles the private property sector that should be a partner to government. This particular 5-year period is a government that speaks of a social compact with communities and business organizations. And that social compact does not get lived through properly in an activist parliamentary way, as well as an activist, because if parliament is an activist parliament, then every minister should be an activist minister, and every DG should be an activist DG. And so we should have an activist or government rather than just an activist parliament. And so the social compact must be lived through every action, every day, all the time. Not just Batopele for the sake of Batopele, but really through action. Construction project management is a very serious problem. This is not just one problem, it's a complex one, but we cannot have a ratio of project managers. And I include social facilitators, and I will say something about it just now, but just project managers that leads and coordinates the projects. The ratio is far too high. They sit with more than 10 to 15, sometimes 20 projects that they lead, and they cannot do justice to those projects. And that causes contractors and very often community organizations to invade and then also be called names such as construction mafia, etc. Just about social facilitators, the committee needs to strongly think of stating to the Council for the Built Environment and the ministers to start thinking of professionalizing social facilitation, because there is a strong need for very strong social facilitators per construction project to ensure the communities buy in. If we think of social facilitation at Hout Bay Harbour, for instance, those gangsters and poachers that are busy destabilizing the functioning of that harbour and interfere in the work and threaten the harbour master, as I'm certain they threaten businesses there as well. They threatened us when we were there as a committee. If there is strong social facilitation and knowledge of that community, that type of negative energy can be channeled to a situation where those people will secure that harbour, work that harbour, and leave the negative activities of gangsterism, drug abuse, and poaching behind them and enter the formal economy. So social facilitation, I think we need to seriously think of influencing higher education and training, as well as Council for Built Environment, and say, draw up a curriculum for social facilitators, have professional social facilitators, except for just project managers. Really appoint more project managers per project and social facilitators. High rate of cost overruns and late completion of projects that leads to higher variation orders. There's international research that I'm aware of that shows that these large infrastructure projects that we have gazetted as SIPs, the larger the project, the more complex a project, the higher the rate of variation orders. And when that takes place, that's where corruption very often steps in. If you sign a variation order as a project manager, as a professional architect, what happens is you send that to Treasury signs off on it, and extra money flows. If there's no checking on why that extra money is required in a variation order, and why the project is extended in terms of time, you are going into the terrain of not complying with the PFMA and the infrastructure development management system. That's corruption entering the door and maladministration. Public works entities, I referred to CBE just now. I refer to higher education and training, internships towards professional registration. That is in the case of architects, engineers, but I also now included construction project management and construction project facilitation, social facilitation. We need evidence of private professional built environment sector. You might remember when we did the Construction Industry Development Board recently, it's APP. It refers to the build fees per project, that there is still a lack of full buy-in from private professional built environment companies to assist with the growing of that funds so that we can develop the construction industry further. But this is also the type of thing that should go into the amendment of the Construction Industry Development Boards Act that we're looking forward to in the next Parliament. Outstanding public works and infrastructure legislation. This is very well known to members, the need for a public works bill that assists this department to gather and collect maintenance fees that's owed to it by its sister departments, not human settlement, but specifically SAPS, Department of Constitutional Development and Justice and Correctional Services, and Home Affairs. The incompleteness of the construction policy research branch of this department, in terms of experience, skills, and knowledge to draft legislation, to review policies, to draft regulation for the executive authority, the minister, the policy leader of an innovative, flexible, efficient, immovable asset management, construction, and built environment department. The department loves referring to how it wants to be an agile and dynamically responsive department. That specific branch is the one that also I referred to earlier, and that's branch 4, program 4, that I think might necessitate amending of its budget in the future. Now, what I went through really speaks to the broad policy environment. And I therefore, I'm not going to go through this whole thing. Let me just refer to the National Infrastructure Plan, the National Development Plan, the National Infrastructure Maintenance Strategy, and how it relates to particular projects and budgetary expenditures over the medium-term strategic framework. How it relates to the annual State of the Nation address. That is the broad policy environment that guides, but also money is spent on there and money is projected for it. About entities, Minister is the leader and the policy maker. Minister assists with ensuring that boards are functioning. Very often boards say somebody passed on our board, somebody fell ill, and we don't curate as a board, and ministers and their officers and the DG's office do not act timeously enough for these boards to curate and function. We as a committee are very aware, and I said earlier on I would speak to this, of how the infrastructure development, how the IDT was eroded with a statement in an APP by a minister that the IDT was going to dissolve. And what that set off was a whole host of events that led to IDT not having a functioning board. Sorry, I said Infrastructure Development Trust, it's Independent Development Trust. So apologies if I make those types of mistakes. I'm slightly dyslexic in those terms. But what I'm referring to, my apologies, is the fact that the IDT was almost closed down. The Fifth Parliament said the IDT had to continue, but it had to be restructured. It should not function as a trust anymore. It should become something totally reconfigured. There was a cabinet memo to the effect. Suddenly a new minister came in and it was changed to the tune of the IDT will no longer exist. It will be this committee in its legacy report will have to report how it ensured that turnaround, that the IDT will continue as per the initial decision in 2014-15. And so it is a celebratory aspect, but it means that the IDT requires much more work. The CIDB is doing well, but there's also quite a lot of work to be done. The Agrimal SA is an exceptional one. CBE needs to be tightened up as well to ensure that the NDP and NIMS and National Infrastructure Plan objectives are reached. I don't want to go into the history of the NDP, but it's there in this plan. And some of the weaknesses that the commission, the National Planning Commission reported on in June 2011 were these that we are all well aware of, numbers of employed people being too low, poorly located, inadequate and under-maintained infrastructure, inclusive development being impeded by spatial divisions within the country. And that speaks to the DDM, the district development model, that wants to have a one plan when it comes to spatial integration. The fourth bullet, that people receive uneven and often poor quality of public services in these because of these continued spatial divisions, which is really an apartheid spatial division that we have not succeeded in this country to overcome. And so people continue to receive uneven and poor quality of public services. When a flood rages through a particular region, the regions that really suffer is not the well-maintained infrastructure and well-developed infrastructure areas. It's the poorly maintained infrastructure areas that get flooded and that struggle, where the people then continue to they get destabilized and moved out of secure areas. Levels of corruption is high in this country. It should not be, it need not be. We need to fight it, but not just erode and destroy in fighting, but also to build up progressively. So I want to move, Chairperson, with your permission, to the policy priorities, which is very similar to the Fifth Parliament. That creation of 6 billion, I think, has been changed. The operationalization of the PMTE and transformation of the core property business, including construction management, but it's construction project management, really. The operationalization of the governance, risk and compliance branch. These are things that was some of this was achieved. That operationalization of the GRCB was certainly there. It had an effect. We do know that the head of the GRCB is now the Inspector General of the country, who has then moved on. But this is also part of the 2011 to 2014 turnaround strategy of a former minister. And then the policy review that should culminate in the Public Works Bill that should be tabled. But none of these, except for the GRCB, came to fruition. So now that we know the link between the mandate, mission, and all those things, but also now that we know what emerged from our strategic plan, this is the repetition, the 3.2, and the support services I just want to refer to quickly before I go further. We, as Parliament, provide support services for you to fulfill your constitutional functions. Parliament provides financial and administration assistance to political parties represented in the institutions, so that you also have your own research and support services and administrative services. But when it comes to procedural and legal advice, content advice, research support, language services, media, logistics, and documentary support, we are the support staff to you, and we focus on your committee and do the work for you. There's a committee secretary, and when she moves on to assist in another committee, we have an acting committee secretary that provides exactly the same service. It should not be different. It should be the same service. In the case of the executive assistant to the chairperson, we have a committee assistant that provides logistics and documentary support, a researcher that provides research support, content advisor provides content and strategic advice, and supports the secretary with quality control of minutes and reports. And so therefore the service to the members can never be slightly different from one meeting to the next. It must always just be better and remain on par so that members can function properly. But members must also remember they have access to media and legal advisors of the department, my apologies, of Parliament, and that they can call on those people to further assist. Yes, so this mandate here, I just want to refer to the committee is required in respect of the mandate of the department to consider, amend, approve, or reject legislation. We must also remember that the budget is a piece of legislation. And if the construction policy research and the legal review department or unit of this department in program 4, if that sub-branch is not performing, we as a committee need to identify what the amount is that is not spent properly. And by not properly doesn't mean too little is spent. It might mean that everyone's salary is paid, yet those warm bodies that get the salaries and live off that money do not necessarily do the work. Extra money is spent to purchase the services of legal advisors and other professionals to draft legislation or responses to legislation. There's nothing wrong with that. But then, of course, we need to say we do not need so many people in that organogram. Now, amending a budget means rejecting a piece of that legislation. You don't need to reject the whole one. You reject a particular portion of it. And that requires a different specialization to what you have in support staff. It's both a financial analysis as well as a public service analysis and a legislative analysis. And so there's a huge requirement on the part of committees to think clearly what a mandatory oversight means. The committee is empowered to do it. It must investigate how it does that. That's part of the specialization that lies within the ambit of members as our democracy grows. Consider and approve budgets and monitor expenditure of department and entities. I just alluded to some of that. Consider progress reports from the line function department and the entities. Now, progress reports is the following. It's set in the Money Bills Amendment Procedure and Related Matters Act that quarterly performance reports and those reports that go to Treasury on a monthly basis, the Section 32 reports, but also the reports through which you amend your budget as a department. In fact, PFMA guides precisely which reports are progress reports of how the department is using the budgets. Those are reports that this department, not this department, my apologies, that this committee needs to see regularly. And the committee does not have to wait for a quarterly performance date to get a progress report. You do not need a signed off report. You need, in other words, signed off by the minister. It's not so that you need that necessarily. You may, as a committee, because it is in your mandate, and because you are a committee mandated by the vision and mission of Parliament and those whole legal framework aligned to the Constitution, you may request progress reports from any branch or sub-branch of the department to satisfy yourself that the funds is properly spent. Through the financial year, you must ensure all appropriate executive organs of the state are held accountable for their actions. Held accountable for their actions, and what their actions are needs to be understood as both in word but also in deed. And so we need to be clear what it is we do when we do oversight. You do not really want to micromanage a department, but you want to step in when something does not feel and sound right. And it must not be an individual member that does that. It must be done properly as a committee, which is why I said the work of this committee must be guided by the rules of Parliament as it applies to the National Assembly. It must be a controlled and deliberate manner of doing the oversight. And so when we do oversight, it is clear that it cannot just be an ad hoc type of thing. It must be linked to a strategic objective that the committee decided on. Now, we state a vision here. What we state here in this part of the strategic plan comes from your 2020, 2022 meetings in which we looked at the Infrastructure Development Act and how that affects this committee's mandate, but also from the engagement on the 9th and the 10th session. But members understand, as it is a living document, strategy is not something that just happens in 1 or 2 days or 1 or 2 meetings or 1 session. It happens right through the period. And so much of this is influenced by everything you have done thus far. Vision stated as this committee wanting to be an activist-oriented committee that legislates and conducts oversight over the minister responsible for policy making, that drives the implementation of the programs of the department. And this is done with a secure focus on the infrastructural development, the construction, job creation, property management and maintenance sector, and transformation within the sector. I think I did something funny here now. No. Somehow I moved. My apologies, Chair and members. It seems as if I skipped more than just one beat back to where we were much earlier. All right, we are back. The second bullet refers to a keen oversight eye on the planning strategies, budget processes, implementation efforts of the department, and to keep a check on whether and how the minister institute an in-year reporting regime. Now, I need to just pause here and refer to aspects of the Public Finance Management Act that relates to the contract of the Director General and how that Director General and the DDGs must report to the minister. They do so on a monthly basis, which means that the minister's office must have its staff, from chief of staff right through to advisors of the minister, must have a system in place that receives these reports from the DG and their department. And that in-year reporting regime is actually legislated. It actually exists in the PFMA. I have a document that I can provide to members, a sheet that shows when reports must go to both the minister as well as Treasury. And that in-year reporting regime requires this committee to keep a check on how the minister and his or her staff and the deputy minister gets those reports from the department. Because if they don't get those reports, then that is where we then have these gaps where underspending and overspending and other challenges are not noticed. It cannot be that the committee is just pleased with everything a minister and a department does. But then also it cannot be that the committee is just displeased without material evidence. And for you to be a proper oversight mechanism over the executive authority, you need to be deliberate and clear on what ministers do in their offices or don't do in their offices on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, and annual basis. In the case of this minister, of course, there's an administration and governance required that the minister must get reports on to ensure that the minister's policies that he or she made progressively improves the department's capacities as the custodian, the maintainer, the accommodator, and landlord and landlady of the state's immovable property. To keep a keen oversight over the minister's review of public works policy that is needed to ensure proper policy focus for the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure to improve its role as immovable property registrar, investor, negotiator through the PMT. And we should actually, in that case, put there as trader as well. So the strategic objectives is then related to that of Parliament, but much more focused on how work opportunities are developed for poor and unemployed people through labor-intensive delivery of public service and infrastructure. Now, the importance is that labor-intensive delivery means that the planning of projects must also have a particular component and amounts set for labor-intensive workers. And so therefore, architects and engineers that plan these projects must have those components written in there, ready for poor and unemployed people to be part of every single project. Operationalization of PMTE must be completed. It is incomplete currently, and the transformation of the core property business, including construction project management, must be properly stated, as well as the issue of project managers and social facilitators. Operationalization of the GRCB to drive anti-corruption. We are worried that since the move of the head of that branch out of the department, we don't know how secure that branch is and whether reports on anti-corruption is continuing. Policy review for a public works bill must be tabled in Parliament, and then a renewed and sustained program of action to transform built environment and construction. Built environment being professional built environment under the construction building entity, as well as the CIDB, as part of the second, more radical phase of transition to democracy. The Portfolio Committee commits itself to continue robust engagement and oversight over the Minister's work by keeping a strong focus on the strategic plan, and these will include the creation of 6 million jobs, operationalization of the PMT, GRCB, and the program of action. So we state now in the next one the key oversight areas, to use the 5-year strategic and annual performance plans as information packages. We then identify challenges that delay service delivery departments from doing their work optimally, and execute oversight activities over the department, its entities, at the construction and professional built environment sector. We focus on the growing function of the department as coordinator of large-scale infrastructure projects, of large infrastructure project development through PISA, and the transformation that is needed in the professional built environment, construction and property management sector, job creation and property maintenance that fall in the ambit of the sector of works and infrastructure. To keep a focus on contractor development program in the CIDB, and the efforts of the entity, often in collaboration with the Competition Commission. Now, just to pause here and mention to members that this is the other aspect. The work of the Competition Commission to check on possible price collusion between building material suppliers in local sectors is a very serious one that we also need specialization of in this committee, because there's often collusion in the construction industry that we saw, for instance, in 2010 with the PVC piping, etc., the cement, etc., when the 2010 stadia were built. To do oversight over the broadening of the inner city regeneration program. The program has now changed, but it remains in essence an inner city regeneration program, and it will fit in with the district development model. The inner city has now turned into a model of a single service provision where all departments, home affairs, etc., to issue birth certificates, death certificates, and identity documents, social development to ensure the indigent and poor and aged is able to draw their grants, all a one-stop shop, but also police stations, etc., will then be part of that. But these must not be in cities only. It must be in rural towns and in villages as well. Not a city focus, but broad focus through every single sphere. To do oversight over phase 4 now of the EPWP, not 3, its skills development component and capacity building that's needed in local and district municipalities, and to do oversight over transformation of the built environment professions to identify changes that may be required to ensure sufficient graduates, professional interns, and professional registered built environment professionals for the infrastructure and maintenance needs of the country. to do oversight over the changes that are required to change the mandate and focus of the IDT, so that that entity's business case goes through cabinet, is approved by Public Service, Department of Public Service and Administration and Treasury, so that it can be positioned as the implementing arm of public works for social facilitation and delivery of social infrastructure. And then we list more specifics that I think we went through earlier on. These were listed earlier on, of what emerged from the 9 and 10 session. Just to focus on this particular bullet over infrastructure coordination of the district development part, that of coordinating the function of the DBSA, ISA and Treasury. Remember, they have this MOU, and we also lately learned that the Enterprise Development Corporation, the EDC, is also part of this. And I recall one of the questions that Samantha Gray-Marie asked was whether EDC is now part of it or not. If I made a mistake there with a member that asked the question, the committee can correct me, but we heard that the EDC is indeed now also part of this coordinating function. The oversight over planning permission and oversight over deliverables 2020-2025. As I said, it could be 2019-24, it should be. And then ISA as entity within the DPWI, we listed these, the unclear issues, and we listed also the failure of PMTE in terms of camps and UAMPs, and then our annual performance program. Now, Chair, this is where the annual performance plan starts. I have completed now, Chair, with the strategic plan, and I think it's almost 10:30. I think, Chair, I want to pause here and allow members to come in and guide in terms of aspects that require further explanation or aspects that they want amended. Chairperson, this is, let me just show members, this 4.5 onwards is the annual performance program, actually annual performance plan that we use to populate the term programs for members, and it has this type of look of ticking off what has been done and what will be done, and targets. So that's very much the committee secretary's terrain. The strategic plan stops on this page. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much, Shuaib, for this detailed presentation of our strat plan. I saw a message in which Honorable Hicklin was requesting she was requesting the report. I tried to explain that we do have the report in our package, but I think she will explain further. But now I am inviting honorable members to comment, engage on the report that has been presented to us. Honorable members, please bear with me. I am using another device. I may not see your hands, but I can see the one of Honorable Hicklin, the one of Honorable Silo Sihlolo. Those are the only hands that I can see. I am using a device that I'm not used to, so please bear with me. You can just maybe tell me verbally that your hand is up. Thank you. Honorable Hicklin, over to you.
Thank you so much, Chair. The document that I'm referring to, let's just get that out of the way in the beginning, was Shuaib mentioned that he had a one-pager on when the minister actually receives what he receives and actually tells us what he does on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. That is the document that I was referring to. Obviously, I have this document as part of the package which we have been discussing. My opening remarks are that I want to say a very, very big thank you to our support team. I don't think that anybody in Parliament understands the level of amazingness that we have in the support team that we have in the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure. Our content advisor, our researcher, our secretary, all the support team that we have in the Department of Public Works, your work is beyond supreme. And it is shown in every single report that we get. And I think that is the first thing that has to be acknowledged, because it's that level of excellence that we have in the support that we get that enables us to produce the kind of work that we as a committee produce. And in the main, Shuaib and Inez, I doff my hat to you. And I think that's one of the things that is lacking in our ministerial office, because the minister that we currently have and the minister that we had in the past show distinct leadership deficits, because I don't think they have that level of support that we have. And I think it's very, very evident. There was a cabinet reshuffle. I don't think we've actually seen our new minister in this portfolio committee ever. He greeted us for 2 minutes. We never saw his face and we haven't seen him yet. And I think that that is a major problem for this portfolio committee. If we are never going to see the minister that is the head of this department, we are going to be immeasurably hampered in being able to hold the executive authority of the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure to account. And that is a major problem for us, because we have an underperformance of the PMTE that puts this department severely at risk, because the PMTE is one of the major cornerstones of the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure. And we, as a portfolio committee, have to hold the entities and the department to account. And if one of the largest pillars of the department, being the executive authority and the PMTE, are not available to us, how do we hold the executive authority and the department into account? The other point that I really want to raise is a lack of collaboration, as was very, very evident on our oversight visit to the small harbours, between the DPWI and the sister departments, such as SAPS, the Department of Defence, and DFFE. I mean, it was so apparent on our visit to the small harbours. It was really, really, really dreadful. We also need to define the dual responsibilities in terms of maintenance that we find, again, relating to PMTE and the 100,000 Rand relationship between when the Department of Public Works is responsible for maintenance and when user departments are responsible for maintenance. This again goes back to UAMPS and CAMPS. If UAMPS are part of the mandate, if GIAMA is really done correctly and the user asset management plans are done, then the needs of the department are taken into account, and we can actually understand more, and the users can understand more what their responsibility is and what our responsibility as a department is. There was a severe leadership deficit under Patricia de Lille, because she never led the department the way it should have been led. And I'm afraid I see the same thing happening now with this new minister, because we never ever see him. As was alluded to in this presentation, the responsibilities and the moving of Kgasionso Ramokgopa as the new Minister of Electricity, so he's now out of Infrastructure South Africa and no replacement has been brought in to take over his post, is now making us even less aware of what is going on in ISA. That has to be urgently addressed, as well as the clarification of a proper organogram for ISA, because we have never really known what has been going on in ISA as the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure. The and infrastructure portion of the Department of Public Works has never really featured in anything that we have done. An entire organogram has to be provided to this department portfolio committee so that we can do proper oversight onto that. The PMTE still remains our biggest risk. Sorry, just to go back to the organogram, we have to set a deadline as this portfolio committee for when we are going to get a detailed organogram for ISA and how it fits into the DPWI. The PMTE remains the biggest risk to the failure of the DPWI. It's a Schedule 2 entity. It has a complete inability to operate effectively because of the low targets that are set for custodian immovable assets management and for user asset management. We seem to have a lack of an ability to get the PMTE to implement Guyana. And I don't understand how the portfolio committee is able to do that. The PMTE is our own entity. It's an entity owned by the Department of Public Works. They should be the implementing agent for the refurbishment and the rebuilding of infrastructure for public works buildings. And yet the PMTE finds itself competing against DBSA, KUGA, and every other potential implementing agent that the Parliament has on its books. And this leads to tensions and unnecessary legal costs. And it's ridiculous. It also is really, really bad because if the PMTE cannot fulfill its mandate by paying its debt to municipalities, we'll end up with a situation like we have with the Brackenfell SAPS. I'm sure you all recall as portfolio committee members, the issue that resulted in the fracas that happened between SAPS in Ekurhuleni and the situation with the building, because SAPS SAPS was cut off with electricity because the municipal bill wasn't paid for electricity and water. And so they found themselves without electricity and water because DPWI didn't pay their bill. We also urgently, it needs to be stated more clearly again or reinforced, Shuaib, from my perspective, on the updating of legislation, the CBE Act, most definitely the Public Works Bill. We also have to re-emphasize how important the importance of keeping an eye on cost overruns, variations on orders within the National Treasury, the ability to create loopholes that open the door to corruption, time delays. These are severe problems that exist that have to be highlighted within this report. The research policy deficit is really, really problematic and reflects again in the Public Works Bill, reflects again in so much of the updating of legislation such as the CBE Act. And the one thing I also want to highlight in terms of the CBE Act, the CIDB, the construction industry policy branch of the DPWI, the CBE wants to equate people who have studied for 4 years and got a degree as a professional architect with someone who has a diploma in quantity surveying or the like, and put them on the same level. And this degrades the value of people who have studied for a degree because they want to put them on a par, and it devalues the kind of work that is done by those who have studied and got a degree. And we have to ensure that that kind of, I understand that they want to upskill people and they want to put everybody on the same level, but you cannot allow that to happen. You cannot allow the devaluing of a degree at the expense of other people who have spent years studying to be equated with someone who has a 6-month or a 9-month NQ diploma. That devalues the work of someone who has worked for 4 years. We have to guard against that. And that is the work and the value that oversight does, is to ensure that entities do not devalue the work done by people who have studied for 4 years and more. The minister's department itself does not seem to have the same kind of support structure that we as a portfolio committee department has. We have researchers, we have content advisors, we have secretaries. From what I am seeing, the minister's department doesn't have that level of support that we have, or it's certainly not manifesting itself in the kind of way in which we get interactions from the minister's departments. I see that in the level of answers to questions that I get in questions posed to the minister. They don't seem to have the depth of research and the depth of knowledge when they come back with answers to questions that we pose. And that needs to be addressed as well, because even in questions, when you ask questions in the House, the ministers don't seem to be as much in touch with their departments as we in the portfolio committee seem to be. And that is a great depth of knowledge and knowledge deficit that has to be addressed if we as a parliament want to be a parliament of the people, for the people, and about the people. But I really want to commend you, Shuaib, Inez, and our support team on a brilliant interpretation of what we have discussed as the committee and the way in which we interact as a committee as being representative of the way we have worked over the last 4 years, and particularly in that 2-day session that we held in 2022. I'll leave it there. Thank you, Chair. If I have any other comments, I'll take another bite at the cherry if there's time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Honorable Hicklin, Honorable Sitlolo, followed by Honorable Siwisa, followed by Honorable Njoba.
Chairperson, thank you very much indeed, and thank you to Shahib for taking us through the document. You will bear with me as I try to consolidate my notes here in as far as some of the key points that I took out from the document. Chairperson, I take note of the fact that the department is indeed a coordinating department and as such an enabling department. And because of this, there are quite a number of issues that have already come to my attention in as far as issues relating to the unlawful occupation of properties owned by the department. And I wanted to kind of speak to that in the sense of what my colleague also touched on as far as responses and questions that we submit to the department for feedback. There was a letter that was sent in as far as the unlawful occupation of DPWI properties is concerned, and these are across the country: Waterloo Green in Wynberg, Theodore Street in Fenwood, and the property in Wolmanstal in Tshwane. And I wanted to ask specifically in the committee as to where does one actually put that, and does the department have a sense of responsibility in as far as its response time is concerned to members of the portfolio committee, so that we can then link that with the issue that was also raised on constituency-led oversights by portfolio committee members with matters relating to the department, which I believe is imperative in as far as our oversight is concerned, as emphasized by the presentation from Shoaib. Chair, also take note of the fact that the committee, and this isn't necessarily my first time interacting with the committee. You'll remember that last year on the 1st of December, we set to deliberate on petitions that were submitted to the portfolio committee regarding road constructions in the Northwest. And I wanted to make a plea and to emphasize the point that if, as a committee, we are going to look into oversights that are led by us as members of parliament and subsequent committee members in this particular committee, that we then revisit petitions that have been submitted, so that we may be able to then, as part of our coordinating efforts and our working together with other spheres of government and various other departments, that we may be able to establish what has been the progress that has been made in as far as provincial departments are concerned on petitions that have been submitted on behalf of our constituencies, whether there's any fruits that have obviously come out of that, whether there's been an effort to facilitate a process where those projects, in as far as issues that are brought to the committee are concerned, have been dealt with. And what then is our responsibility as a committee in as far as holding our counterparts accountable for such issues. Chair, the issue of around the professionalization of social facilitators, for me, is an important issue, because I understand that many projects, in particular in rural municipalities, whether it is in the Northwest, in KZN, in the Free State, Mpumalanga, have subsequently come to a standstill because of issues relating to social facilitators. And I think that it is important that we also kind of put ourselves in a position where we are able to take such issues into account. And because at the end of the day, the outcomes of work that has been done by various departments being enabled by the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure is as a result of direct service delivery that needs to take place across the country. And if those things do not happen in as far as the construction of roads is concerned, the taking responsibility and ownership of protecting DPWI buildings so that we secure them from illegal occupation or invasion is something that is incredibly important. Otherwise, we would have then failed in our mandate if we are unable to bring such issues to the fore and also facilitate a process where we are able to take full responsibility of holding the department accountable for such failures. Yeah, I think that would be it in as far as my contribution is concerned. I think I will be able to contribute far more fruitfully next time as I get to learn more about the department and the committee itself. Thank you so much, Honorable Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Sihlalo. Honorable Siwisa, followed by Honorable Jobo, and the last one will be Honorable Van Schalkwyk.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. I've been a little bit out of touch with what's happening in the committee, but Chair, let me just, and I'm a bit concerned, and I think this is something that is spoken about for so many times, and even the former Minister of Public Works, I always had a problem with her. And when it comes to her responses to questions that are being posed by committee members. And I think at some point I even raised the issue that it depends on the platform where she has to answer questions, because at different platforms, the same question, we get different responses. This brings me to 4.1 of the mandate of the committee itself. The mandates are very clear, but it seems as if the department itself does not want to adhere to the mandates that are given, that are the responsibility of the committee, especially when it comes to ensuring that all appropriate executive organs of state are held accountable for their actions, conduct oversight of the National Executive Authority and any other organ of state. This brings me back to the issue, Chair, if you can remember, when we went to the oversight of the national headquarters of public works, of SAPS, my apologies, in Pretoria, and the treatment that the committee got, it was like we are a non-existent committee. And the level of lack of respect that we had. So those are some of the issues that need to be addressed with the Department of Public Works. And Honorable Hickling touched on something to say, we've got the best team in our committee, and it seems as if the minister, it does not have the best. I would agree with her and even take it. Maybe we should, it must go to a point of saying that, are the people that are there, are they being held accountable to bring the minister up to speed as to what's happening in his, now we are going to say his department, based on the experience of the former Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure. And it boils back to say whether he's got the best team or not, but he should be the one that needs to be held accountable. And this is something that we've asserted many times in the past, to say, whatever happens in public works, the buck stops with the minister. So whatever he or she signs, the last signature is his and the signature of the DG. I stand to be corrected. But the last person that needs to give, to say that this needs to go on, it stops with the minister. The signature that comes out is the minister. The person that needs to be held accountable is the minister. The minister is the person that needs to make sure that the people that are reporting to her are actually people that are reporting the correct thing. So that 4.1 for me says that we've done what needs to be done, but the minister himself or herself, as the former minister, does not do what needs to be done, which leads for us being disrespected at the level that we've seen at the oversight. And it's not even only that, Chair. It even goes to a level of, if the Department of Public Works goes to SCOPA, they are more afraid of SCOPA than the actual person where they are supposed to hold accountable, because you get there, you find different answers to whatever questions that we've once posted to them. So now the department itself and the issue of, I think, Chair, we need to have a meeting whereby the minister will be in the meeting, not a day when the executive is actually meeting. We need to have, and the newly appointed minister needs to understand the mandates of this committee and needs to come up with other strategic ways to make sure that we are allowed to do our work. Because at this moment, we do what needs to be done. We do recommendations, we send the recommendations, but some of these recommendations are not actually being put in place, which means that the department itself is undermining the committee itself, where they are supposed to be having accountability. We spoke about creation of 1 million jobs, but still today you'd find that we find a department that comes and still there is not enough employment for women, youth, and people with disability. We don't have enough when we come to the construction issues and contractors that are women. We still find ourselves, irrespective of the recommendations that we are making, we still find the department that is not willing to push up people from a lower level to a higher level where they'll be able, rather their decisions, which I think we also need to look into the legislature that has been put in place, that people's abilities to be given big contract is based on their financial bank statements. That's with some of these tender people, we speak to them and they tell us that in order for us to get a certain tender, these are some of the documents they're looking for. And one of them, the main one, is do we have enough funds? What they do, they go out there, speak to their friends to give them money just for them to have whatever amount, is it 2 million in their bank accounts or anything. So we also need to look into the legislature that speaks to what are the recommendations for a certain person to be given an opportunity to be a contractor of a certain building. It also goes back to, I think some of the points Honorable Hickling has also alluded on them. The question of the DBSA, which we don't have any jurisdiction over. How PMTE, how IDT has to fight, and we are still fighting for IDT to be very independent. But IDT can't be independent because all those millions and billions of contracts or of renovations of buildings that need to be done. And then we are going, infrastructure SA is going to be brought in. DBSA, which is a disgrace to the Department of Public Works, they can't even finish a building that we found in our report when we came in 2019. DBSA couldn't finish that. They are running from pillar to post. There's Kucha. We are fighting for IDT. So the department needs to take its own entities serious. They need to take them very serious. We need to look into all these legislations that allow people to move from level 1 to level 9 or level 10 in the building industry. So, but Chair, my main issue is the minister needs to come in. We need to make it clear to him about the mandate of this committee before he does the mistakes that the previous minister did. If that meeting can be arranged when the executive is not sitting, even if it's on a Sunday, we are all public representatives. We must be available anytime when the need arises. But we need to have the meeting where the minister must come here. The mandate must be made very clear. He's got only 1 year to make a turnaround. I don't know how he's going to do it, but he needs to come up with a turnaround strategy because public works is a mess. We are sitting in houses with torn curtains. You can't even take a proper bath in the afternoon. You have to close the curtains because if you open them, somebody's passing there is going to see you naked. So he must come here and tell us how is he going to make a turnaround strategy. Buildings are falling apart. The maintenance plan that was spoken about is not actually put in place. He must come and tell us what's the way forward. What happens with all these buildings that belong to public works that are not being utilized, or they have been sent to private ownerships for renting. Yet the sister departments are still struggling to get accommodation for them to be able to do their work effectively. So we need to arrange that meeting when chairperson that the minister must come here, must tell us. We are still sitting with a crisis of KZN flood victims where public works promised that they are going to get land for human settlement to go and build houses. How far is that process? All of those things, the minister must come here. We are left with plus minus 8 months before the 6th parliament goes into, we move to the 7th parliament. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Siwiso. Honorable Joe.
Thank you, Chairperson. Good morning to members and public works. Yes, Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, you are audible, Honorable Njobo.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Chairperson, and good morning to members and the public works support team. And firstly, Chair, I would like to welcome the report and thanks to the team that is Ines and Nola and the doctor of the report, Dr. Shoaib. Thanks, Chair, for the opportunity. One, Chair, we have on the 24th of May, we are going to have a budget vote, of which on our review program, we are debating on that 24, but at the same time, on that day, we are going to have a portfolio committee. I think as members, we need to look on that one, because that on that day, that budget vote, we are attending physical. So I think we need to check, is it possible for us to have a portfolio committee on that day? I understand it's on virtual, but the budget vote, it's late, but the pressure of debating. Number two, the issue of minister to attend the portfolio committee. Maybe the chairperson can help us to talk to the minister to come to the portfolio committee so that we can talk to the minister, especially on the issues, the burning issues of the portfolio committee, like our mandate as members, especially the minister is the first time in the National Assembly, so that we can be on one page with him. Lastly, Chair, I'm covered with honorables, especially on the issue of DBSA vis-a-vis no IDT, that maybe if we get that opportunity to have the minister, let's talk about this issue of IDT with the department, the issue of allocation of IDT. Lastly, Chair, because the report is the true reflection what we talked on that on the strategic plan, I like to propose to adopt the report, this report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Njobo. If you may allow me, before Honorable Van Schalkwyk, to respond just on the issue of the budget vote debate. According to the information, I think we might have miscommunicated the actual date. It is Tuesday, the 23rd, not on the date of our portfolio committee. So if you can correct that, and sincere apologies if I may have communicated and say the 24th, it's Tuesday, the 23rd of May. So
okay.
Sincere apologies, Njiyaxolisa kakhulu. I just wanted to come on that one so that it is noted. Honorable Van Schalkwyk.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and good morning to our honorable members, Chairperson, and our team present. I would also like to join the previous speakers, Chairperson, in welcoming the presentation that has been made. Surely, Chairperson, it is an indication to me that what has been presented is a true reflection of our engagements throughout the sessions that we've had, and it's really a very not a very in-depth reflection of our discussions and our agreements, our proposals and recommendations that we've made in ensuring that this final document reach this stage. I would like to join the previous speakers also, Chairperson, in welcoming and appreciating the good work that has been done, actually the excellent performance by our team through our committee secretary, our content advisor, our researcher, and everyone who formed part of the team. Our views were well captured, and I don't think that it's necessary for us to dwell any further, because we know as the strategic plan, we are not venturing into the finer details, but we're giving our broad outline and framework in terms of working or moving forward. Chairperson correctly said so in terms of the issues raised with regards to IDT, with regards to ISA, and I would also like to join the concern that has been raised, or echo the concern in terms of not having reported on a replacement of Dr. Ramokgopa, and we don't really know what's happening there. So our annual performance program is therefore well captured. But I would like to emphasize, Chairperson, the urgent need throughout of people being employed into vacant funded posts, especially senior management level, because we've seen throughout our term that for the biggest part, Chairperson, we've had an acting DG in the department, and surely that can't be a good reflection on the work that needs to be done, but also in terms of the morale of the staff. We've seen various acting positions that's in place, and it's a phenomenon that's just been throughout and recurring, and although we've raised our concerns through on a continuous basis, it's actually very slow in being adhered to in terms of our recommendations. Chairperson, also what is a point of concern to me is when we look at the legacy report that has been presented in our preparation for our legacy report. I think one of the recommendations in the legacy report should emphasize that the incoming team should prioritize the issues that has been mentioned in the legacy report, especially when we look at what happened 2 weeks back when we visited the small harbors. We've been planning to do an oversight visit in terms of the small harbors as a follow-up from the 2017 visit by the previous parliament, and we just delayed, not deliberately, but because of various reasons. But we saw that if we would have prioritized some of the issues in our legacy report, we could have reached a stage at the current conjuncture whereby many of the issues that we saw deteriorated as since the last oversight visit could have been addressed successfully. So I would really need to make the proposal that in our legacy report, those kind of issues should be highlighted. We must also recognize, Chair, that surely many of us are thinking that, or are stating just the negatives as we make our inputs. And surely there's a lot of things that are challenging, that are negatives, that needs to be addressed. But I want to have a slightly different view, Chairperson, in terms of recognizing and appreciating the work, the great work that has been done by this portfolio committee in this term, because I know it's been a joint effort between the different stakeholders, but specifically the effort made by the staff, made by the members of this portfolio committee in making sure that it's not just doom and gloom pertaining the issues in the department and its entities, but we've made a lot of strides in ensuring that issues are being tackled, that oversight take place, that we perform on our mandate as we've been appointed on. And I think we should need to before we move forward, Chair, we need to tap ourselves on the shoulder, not for praising a fish for swimming, but for excelling in our duty, our oversight duty in trying to keep the accountable officers, the accountable people up to standard, and ensuring that we do as we've pledged support to, and really, Chairperson, I feel we are one of the best performing portfolio committees, and even in terms of our interaction with the department, with the entities, but even our interaction amongst ourselves as the portfolio committee members and our team, we need to really tap ourselves on the shoulder for that. I think moving forward, Chairperson, there's not much that I think we can add, but safe to say is that what has been captured is a correct reflection of our discussions, our proposals, and our deliberations, and our oversight journey in preparation for the end of our term, but also in preparation for our legacy report. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you so much, Honorable Van Schalkwyk. Not sure whether are there any hands, if someone can assist me. As I indicated earlier, that I can't see all because of this device that I'm using. In the absence of any hands, I must also add my voice. Hello?
There is one hand from Honorable Suisa, but she just needs to tell us whether that's a legacy hand or...
I think it's a legacy hand, because
I'm done, Chair. Apologies.
Okay, thank you so much, Honorable Suisa. One, let me add my voice in appreciating a well thought and written report by our support team, Ms. Ines, Mr. Shuaib, and Ms. Martinez. You've done so well in preparing this report, starting from 2019, going up to the last time that we had a workshop, which was in September last year. We really appreciate this work that you have done. I'm adding this because all the members, they have said that I think we're one of the portfolio committees that has not missed anything due to the support that you are giving us. We really appreciate the work that you have done. Two, I also want to support what we have raised as this portfolio committee several times, that we have a department here that doesn't support its own entities, and you will find that it would rather go. The Telkom Towers has shown us that there are agencies that fail to do their work, but this department is continuing in supporting those agents. And as such, we did raise the issue that whatever that they do, they must include IDT, an agent that has turned around from what it used to be. So this is the call that we'll always make to the department, and a call that we would like to see in all our documents, that we are saying the department must support its own entities, because we don't want to see IDT going back to where it used to be. Lastly, on the issue of this report, I've seen that you said the last few pages, slides, they talk on what Ms. Martinez would have done if she was part of the meeting. And I've also seen, when I was reading the document, what we should. But on this issue, I agree with all the honorable members. The new minister owes us a attendance in our portfolio committee. We know that the portfolio committee, it clashes with the cabinet committees, but we all know also that not all cabinet committees are not all Wednesdays. We have cabinet committees. So I think the PLO, if he's part of the meeting, must inform the minister that we would like him to attend our portfolio committee meetings. It can be that he is not attending our meetings. Yes, the deputy minister is always here, but we would also want to see him. So you correct Honorable Hicklin on that one. We feel that we need to support you, and as such, it's something that has to be done. We will make a follow-up on the issue of who is now acting as the head of infrastructure. As you all know, we were presented with a budget and an organogram by the then Dr. Ramakgopa, who is now the Minister of Electricity, of team that they were going to employ. So I think we need to check who is now acting as head of ISA. It's information that needs to be made available to us, as we are the one that are playing oversight to that directorate, which is within the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure. So after you have responded, Mr. Shuaib and Ms. Inez, on the questions and comments that have been raised by honorable members, I will then request a seconder to what Honorable Njobo has proposed and moved, that we adopt this report as a true reflection of what we have done. She did move, but we didn't have any seconder. Thank you. Up to you, Honorable, Mr. Tenzin.
Thank you, Chair.
Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I must admit, as hard as we try, we cannot be honorable ones. We are not sworn in yet. Chair. Chair, thank you. But also, Chair, thank you for the glowing reports from your side when it comes to the work we are doing. We try our best, but as Honorable van Schalkwyk from the Sweetwaters indeed says, you can't necessarily praise a fish for swimming. We've been doing this swimming for a long time, so it comes naturally, I guess. Chair, we try as much as possible to provide a service in the simplest as possible way. Members might recall me always referring to complexity as hiding things. When we speak in complex languages, I always feel we are not being activist oriented and people oriented. And I think that's what we've been trying to do with all our reports as well. Can I just respond to, I think there's it's not as many as I make it, but there are 5 things, Chair. The India report, I sent it to our WhatsApp group so that everyone has it. The other correction I just wanted to make, I made on the WhatsApp group as well to Member Hicklin. When we speak, we sometimes slip things in without knowing, and I think that's what she did when she referred to the PMTE as Schedule 2. She does know, and all of us know, that it's actually some of our other entities that are Schedule 2 and that should stand on their own legs. The IDT, for instance, is one. But just to say that it is indeed the view of Treasury that the PMTE should trade on the value of the properties of government that is in the immovable asset register. And this committee has said so, Honorable Hicklin has said so, Honorable Suisa has said so, Honorable Thring has said so numerous times. It should progress. What we are indicating regarding the PMTE is that it has not progressed. We have not seen progress. Chair, it might be advisable for this committee, as you ask for a mover, to include that we actually, when we have the minister with us, that we instruct the minister to provide guidance on these 2. It's really 3. The one is the reconfiguration of the IDT to be the preferred entity regarding social infrastructure and maintenance projects of this department. The second one is that the minister provides us, he can bring a team with him, with a fully fledged trajectory from beginning to what the PMTE should be when it is fully operationalized. And then thirdly, Chair, that we get a full report on the Public Works Bill, the amendment to the CIDB, and the CBE. Now, Chair, that actually leaves me with probably 1 or 2 other things only. Our new member, Chairperson, who referred to the matter of petitions and following up. It's a very important and a very useful suggestion that he makes. Chair, previously in other committees that I worked in, not as a content advisor, but as a researcher for a political party, we've tried to have the meetings of the committee always having a separate session in which members would bring constituency issues to the committee. And that's a useful practice. But to speak specifically to the matter that the honourable member raised on petitions itself, that pertains to local government, municipality matters, as well as provincial matters, it must be within the frame of public works. Now, public works, provincial departments would have roads with it, and it would sometimes have security, in other words, police with it, but it does not mean we cannot deal with those matters, Chair. But I would suggest that this committee, as an NA committee, focused on national matters, should get the minister to understand that we know as a committee that the minister should have regular meetings with MECs of public works. And that when those meetings take place, the minister report on those issues, including issues that members brought from constituencies, to this committee. This is once again a new method, once again an innovative method of oversight where we join up matters regarding service delivery and we act as and live as activist parliamentarians should. Chair, about the member, the fighter member that refers to, correctly so, to the manners in which ministers respond to questions. It is a matter that needs serious attention, not only by this committee, but by Parliament as a whole, but also that in our oversight, we must be strong on this. We don't do oversight over the DGs and the DDGs. Our oversight is over the minister and how the minister monitors how those people in those positions do the policy leading work of the minister. And so we strongly always notice when we do recommendations, it's never a recommendation to a DG. It's never a recommendation to the IDT or to the entities. It's to the minister to instruct those people. Chair, on the matter of the honourable fighter member also refers to the state of buildings in prestige. In other words, in the villages. But also that would then include the ministerial buildings. It would include issues that were brought up already as eating into the budget of the department, the special provision of generators to ministers to assist them during during load shedding, and how weak our village reception very often is, that we can't hear the chair, we can't hear any member because of the weakness of the Wi-Fi in the villages. So these are matters that we will put in front of the minister, hopefully, if the minister then visit this committee. A visit it would be indeed, because the minister is not fully, has not become part of our family yet. Chair, just on that, before I move off it, the understanding, and you would notice in, say, various budget vote reports, various BRRR reports, this committee is reported as follows. It says that this committee assists the department in doing its work. It assists the minister, and it is one of the oversight mechanisms. The others is the minister doing oversight over the DG and the department's work on how they do his policy bidding. And the other one is the Office of the Auditor General. And so it's a suite of oversight. It's a network of oversight that needs to work together respectfully, as Member van Schalkwyk put it. And we do so not in a negative way, but in a progressive way. The behavior of this committee is very important. Activism doesn't mean breaking down, it means building up. Chair, then the other thing I want to correct, just to assist our fighter member, is with the issue of contractors and money in accounts. Chair, there is a misunderstanding often on the contractors, the register of contractors. In other words, level 1 to 9. The issue is that of graduating from one to the other. That is a challenge that the CIDB has recognized. Part of what that build fund is all about, and getting big contracting companies to give, I think, 12% of their total fees for developing grade 1 further up, is what is the challenge, and that's what that strategy is all about. But let me say this about the misunderstanding of money in the accounts. It's not money in their personal accounts. It's money in their business accounts. That's the first thing. And secondly, the money in the business accounts is linked to an effort to ensure that the registered contractor, only registered contractors of a particular amount can operate at a particular level. That is used as proof that material evidence, therefore, that they can manage money of or a contract of a certain amount. In the fourth and the fifth parliament, this portfolio, your predecessors made it very clear to the CIDB that that is not the be all and end all. Having a certain amount of money in your business account does not prove that you can do a certain quality of project at a particular level. And we said to them that that's not enough, and it has to be, other factors need to be considered as part of graduating from one level to the other. But I just wanted to correct the misnomer that it's in any account or in their personal accounts. I mean, it doesn't mean that I can ask the chairperson and Member Hicklin and Member Siwisa and Member Setlolo to give me 25,000 each to swell my account, so that can prove that I can move to level 4 from level 3. It doesn't. The proof, the material evidence must be linkable. That amount of money must be linked to particular contracts that were performed. It's also linked to monies paid to SARS from such business transactions. So that we must remain clear about. Otherwise, we are not doing it correctly. Chair, I therefore, I think I responded to everything, including the positive rather than the negative from the Northern Cape. But also, I think one of the things we need to say in the legacy report also is that this thing of visiting Western Cape harbors must come to an end. I'm not saying we should not do it, but only visiting these harbors is not good enough. We need to now go see the Northern Cape harbors as well. And then we want to go see the harbor, the port at Port St. John's. Whether it's completed or not, we need to go there in the next committee, and we need to go see the other sites that's earmarked for harbors, proclaimed small harbors, and it must be linked to the development of those communities. Solid spatial infrastructure plans as per the one plan in the DDM, so that we can really come to infrastructure and social economic development at local level. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thanks, Chairperson. Just two issues that I wanted to add to what Shuaib indicated. In terms of the Public Works Bill, what would assist as well is if the committee can have the department provide its updated organogram, because we need to see now if what is actually happening in the department, if it's fit for purpose, especially when we consider the addition of the infrastructure component to the Public Works portfolio from 2019. And then the other issue is in terms of the property management trading entity. One of the suggestions was in the past that the budgets for maintenance, accommodation, and rates, which the property management trading entity has to pay on behalf of these, on behalf of the departments, should be ring-fenced. And I think that would probably be one of the issues that follow-up needs to be looked at. And then the other one is to do with the Foreign Services Act, where the foreign properties, their maintenance, etc., has now been shifted towards the department, to DIRCO. I think that apart from the where if the disposal aspect remains with the Minister of Public Works, I think that is also one of the key areas that needs to be looked at. And of course, the members have mentioned the prestige portfolio, which includes, as Shuaib said, not only the villages, the parliamentary villages, but also the union buildings, etc. There needs to be actually a clearer report from the department in terms of how the prestige portfolio actually implements this aspect of maintenance, because one of the key concerns which the committee will be dealing with next week when the small harbors report, for example, is dealt with, is the issue of maintenance, the delay in maintenance. There's no proactive maintenance. And if I'm not mistaken, I mean, one of the things that was reported to us, for example, from the Robben Island oversight was that people knew that they had to do maintenance, but they actually did not do it. They knew it had to be done. They knew it had to be scheduled on a yearly basis, but for some reason that was not clearly explained to the committee, it did not happen. So that is just an addition that I thought I should add to Shuaib's report. And then of course, the only other issue was to do with 100,000 maintenance initial responsibility within the department. That has also been a very concerning issue that the portfolio committee has raised with the department and these other departments, specifically where there seems to be a tendency to wait before maintenance is actually implemented when it is such a contained amount. And it then becomes this huge requirement, which is one of the ones that we saw, for example, with the jetty at Saldanha Bay, which has now ballooned from whatever hundreds of thousands now into millions. And the only final one I would say is that the other issue that we need to return to, with the infrastructure component now firmly being within the Portfolio Committee of Public Works and Infrastructure, is this aspect of these mini public works departments that Defence and SAPS and Correctional Services, for example, instituted. They would be those departments, for example, that would deal with those 100,000 aspect contained maintenance requirements. But at some point, there seems to have been some kind of blurring of their role and the role of public works and infrastructure. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you so much, Ms. Ines and Shuaib on the responses and further recommendations on the questions that have been asked by honorable members. I see that Honorable Hicklin's hand is up, but I need to remind honorable members this is but one item of our agenda. We still have to do minutes. We still have to adopt the amended committee schedule for this term. And at 12:30, the buses are leaving the villages for those that will be attending the plenary sitting this afternoon. Over to you, Honorable Hicklin.
It's one quick comment, Chair. When I took some of my colleagues through to Agrimar SA, one of the colleagues was from COGTA, and she mentioned how there is absolutely no communication from DPWI to the municipalities. And that was just the comment that I wanted to make, because it is so important that there is so little communication. That was just the comment I wanted to make, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Hicklin. One of the things that we have raised several times about the Agrima SA is the fact that we all didn't know about Agrima SA, though it has been there since 1969. We all don't know about Agrima SA. We all knew about Agrima SA when we became members of this portfolio committee. How much more other people out there? We have raised it several times as the portfolio committee that it must be marketed, but we can see now it is having stakeholders forum, and we really appreciate that. And they said that those stakeholders forum will be annual. But further, what Honorable Hicklin has said is the fact that we felt that as the portfolio committee, the department also needs to do something more in ensuring that all the departments, especially the ones that are dealing with infrastructure, know about the Agrima SA. You talk of your human settlement, you talk of your water and sanitation, but further than that, it must be known even by municipalities. So I think we will follow that up, Honorable Hicklin. We will raise it again when we meet with the department, the issue of Agrima SA. Thank you so much on that one. Can we then go to the next item, Lwazi?
Yes, Chair. I'm gonna flight it now, Chair.
Sorry, Chairperson, before we move forward, I'm
Oh,
not sure if
okay.
we had a
Thank you,
seconder.
Honorable Van Schalkwyk. I think you want to remind me whether do I have the seconder?
I'm seconding the adoption of the report. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Honorable Van Schalkwyk. Honorable Njobo moved for the adoption of the report. Honorable Van Schalkwyk seconded that. Thank you so much for reminding me. Can Mr. Shuaib remove this document so that we have the agenda on our screen? Lwazi? Can you fly to the minutes, please?
Is it visible, Chairperson?
It's only the agenda, not yet the minutes of the.
I've flighted the minutes, Chair.
But it's only the agenda.
It's still the agenda that is on our screen. Okay, the minutes now. Honorable members, these are the minutes of a meeting that we held on the 18th of March, 2023. In which we were to adopt our budget vote. It's the report. If I may, if I may come in on some of the issues that are glaring, just before I allow honorable members to comment. The meeting was physical, not on Zoom platform, and the date of the meeting, it's supposed to be 18 April. This is the meeting that we held in Saldanha. If honorable members would remember. I now invite honorable members to comment on the minutes, whether are they the true reflection of what we discussed on this day when we were dealing with our budget vote report. Honorable Njobo.
Thanks, Chairperson, for the opportunity. I'd like to propose the adoption of the minutes. It's a true reflection of that day of the 18th. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Njobo. Can we get a second, honorable members?
I'll second, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Hicklin, for supporting Honorable Njobo on that one. Honorable members, I think without any, Mr. Laz, you just correct the few issues that we have raised on in terms of apologies. I think the apologies are fine, but it's just that it was not on Zoom platform. We held this meeting in Saldanha Bay after our visit to Saldanha Bay, and then we held this meeting. It was a physical meeting. Yeah, Saldanha Bay Harbour.
Spelled incorrectly, Chair.
Yes.
NHA. There you go. Sorry, there you go.
Okay, the spelling.
Spelling is correct now, Chair.
Okay, okay.
Sorry, Chair, it's not correct.
No, SAL is Saldanha, DA.
I don't think that member should say DA, Chair. It's ANHA. Take the H after the D away, Mr. Ben. That one, perfect.
And OU.
Put a U in there. We're not in the United States.
Sometimes the devices that we are using, they use USA English, sometimes UK English. So you have a serious challenges when it comes what you are writing out. A reminder, honorable members, that on the 23rd, which is Tuesday, we will be having our budget vote deliberations, and they will be on and they will be physical in venue S12A. So all those that will be debating on behalf of their political parties, we will be physical. Tuesday, the time slot will be 4:30 to 6:15 in the evening. So we must always put that on our reminders so that we are all there and deliberate and discuss even some of the issues that we are raising here. On that one, honorable members, I think you all have the amended committee schedule. As we all know, we're supposed to be in Egypt this week, but we had to change and then put in this week schedule in which we are dealing with this. Otherwise, in all others, it's still the programs that we had to be dealing with. It's only this amendment that we have put in this one. We thought that we'll be going around the infrastructure that is so being developed in Egypt. I know I have received many calls, Honorable Hicklin, Honorable Suisa, Honorable Jobo, all raising their dissatisfaction with what has happened. I sincerely apologize, honorable members, on behalf of the office of the chair, the office that was interacting with DERCO, and the embassy. We sincerely apologize for all that, hoping that when the time is right, we will visit. We hoping, we praying and doing all that. Honorable members, in those few words, thank you again for gracing this portfolio committee, for your positive contributions when we're discussing our own strat plan that we all participated. We really appreciate that. We also welcome our new members who has hit the ground running, not saying that I was not part of this plan, but having read the report and having familiarized himself with what is happening in the portfolio committee, he was there discussing all the report that has been there. We really appreciate that. We look forward to working with you. Let's meet in the plenary, honorable members, at 3 this afternoon, and next week in our portfolio committee, again, deliberating on our oversight visit. Thank you so much. The meeting is adjourned.
Nkosi Sihlalo.